Welcome in, you silly freaking gooses. We're going to be covering stock ticker AMC as well as GameStop and the broader market because you've seen a pretty nice sized move on the markets going down, right? Rejecting the 9-day EMA, this blue line off of increasing volume, right? You've seen increasing volume the last 3 days. And what I'm waiting to see is, do you come down to this 758.58 territory, which is that gap fill on the daily time frame for SPY, right? But without further ado, guys, slap the freaking like button, hit the subscribe button, and let's get straight into the technical analysis on AMC. So on AMC in our last video, we mentioned that this uptrend is a big fat nothing burger, right? This uptrend means nothing to me, even though you were retesting it. Of course, it's nice if you can bounce here. I would love for that to occur, but that was not the plan, right? We did not anticipate that happening, especially with the volume, right? Bulls failed to step up here. And so now where you're located is on top of your all-time falling freaking resistance, guys. If you zoom out here on the, let's just go to the daily time frame. Zoom out on the daily time frame, right? Look at all of the different rejections you've had along the way, right? This downtrend tells a freaking story. It's a story of depressive value, right? You've seen multiple rejections and fast, volatile rejections. Now what you've seen here is a break above, a beautiful one at that, on crazy volume, right? Look at that candle. Look at that freaking 186 million daily candle, guys. That comes off of record EBITDA, record earnings, record freaking revenue, right? So you're seeing a lot of the fundamentals change for AMC while you consolidate on top of it as new support on lower volume. Now, today we saw technical higher volume than the previous day, but it's still lower overall. And you can see here, you've actually respected and wicked back above it on the daily time frame. So whether or not you hold this to a T will be interesting, right? Because you do have this technical falling wedge. I'm just using the underbelly of this downtrend as the falling wedge support here, and it's been respecting pretty well. So we're going to see how that works out. You came and freaking swept the lows here today. Now you could see a little bit lower. The point that I'm looking for a bounce, I'm going to cover in just a freaking second. But what I want you guys to get here is AMC is showing a lot of strength, right? And in retrospect, look at GameStop, right? Look at GME. GME is not having a freaking fun time right now. Not at all. You're seeing $17 for the first time in a very long time. AMC's holding up pretty strong, right? Lower volume. Sellers are near non-existent. And what you're seeing here is a retest of not just this macro resistance, but you look at the technical EMAs. What does that stand for? It's exponential moving averages, guys. And the 50-day EMA is coming off bright and beautiful off of this golden cross. That's this yellow line through the purple. That's the 200, right? So if you come down here on the daily time frame, you are within pennies, right? You scooped down to the low today, 232, and I'll tell you why that's important in just 1 second. But the 50-day is currently sitting at 226, right? So typically, your most bullish scenario here is you actually see a retest of this freaking 50-day EMA, and you use it as a launch pad, guys. This could align pretty nicely with the S&P 500 pulling back into this gap fill at 758. And I say that because you want technical confluent theories, right? If this thing is going to pull back into the 50 and find a strong bounce, it's most likely going to happen on a day that the market is green, right? So that's what I'm watching for AMC. And I think it's highly likely given this consolidative period. You can see this cup, and I guess the handle's a little drawn out, right? We didn't want that, but handle's a little drawn out here. So testing the 50 is insanely bullish, right? But you might not have to. And the reason I think that is the weekly time frame, right? Let's say we see SPY rally tomorrow. I don't think you will, but you could see AMC rally because you're currently sitting on top of the weekly 9-day EMA traders. Now, what does that mean, right? On the weekly time frame, that is your short-term trend that you want to stay above, guys. This is something that you've only done back in 2021 before your June squeeze up to 72. Now you can see you're retesting it for the first time since getting the cross and wicking off of it, right? So that is overall bullish. You can see on the weekly time frame, even though the daily saw an increase in volume, the weekly time frame has seen not just one, not just two, not just three, but if you closed underneath 83 million shares traded, you would have 4 weeks in a row of lessering and lessing, and those aren't words, less and less and less of volume, guys. And what does that lead to? Consolidative periods on lowering volume almost always lead to a bottom and a boom boom, right? Great example was here, right? During this leg, volume ramped up, and this is Crayola crayon math for you. Volume up, good. Volume down, good. Inverted bullish hammer, good. Volume down on retrace, good. Bullish engulfing, good, right? Reestablish the 9 on the weekly, good, and you run, right? Looking at what you're doing today, volume up, good. Volume down on retrace, good. You want to see a bullish weekly candle close, preferably a hammer off of this 9 weekly. And just to give you guys some comparison, we're going to zoom out here and we're going to look at the one, the only 2021 and show you guys, right? So back here, you had the 9 cross through the 50, retrace into it, right? You wick off of it, but you held above it every single candle until you got the 9, which is the blue line, through the purple. And that's Crayola math for you, right? That is your DD on AMC with these weekly exponential moving averages, because when you see them cross is when you see them move. You've seen them cross, and you've now seen the first test on the short-term time frame. If this holds, and if this weekly volume consolidation ends, traders, I expect a nice sized move off of AMC. Whether that happens to the upside or rejection, we are still waiting to see, right? Because on the daily, our buddy John, my man John Bollinger, is still consolidating, right? The Bollinger Bands are still getting tighter. And so that is an interesting thing for AMC, right? The bands are beginning to coil and they will expand at some point. But let's say you reject the freaking 50, you reject the weekly 9. You could come down to the lower Bollinger Band at 219, and below that, guys, you have your uptrend, very solid, right around that 205 gap fill from earnings pump, right? So that is left to be filled. So whether or not you do that, I have no idea, but the volume looks nice. The setup looks nice. So we'll have to wait and see. AMC showing a little bit more strength than GameStop and the broader market today. So that's always a good thing, right? That's always a good thing. Let's see, monthly, whole lot of nothing, 4 hour. Showing off that falling wedge formation a little bit, right? Looking nice. All right, let's get into a little bit of GameStop here. Let's get into a little bit of GameStop on the trading view chart. So you're now oversold pretty dramatically, right? You broke down from the falling wedge and you broke down from the uptrend. Not what we wanted to see, right? By any means. But what is likely here, in my opinion, is you are likely to find a freaking bounce. And it's very, very uncommon that you go further than where you are on GameStop, right? So we can see only a handful of times in which you come down to this 22 level on the RSI. The last time you did was back here. And even though this wasn't your low, right? This was not particular by any means a low, but this was a 20% rally from this puke right before you rejected and went further. Something is brewing here on GameStop. You could do the same thing, right? Because you began to make bullishly divergent lows, right? Lower lows, on the chart, significantly lower lows on the chart, right? 16 all the way down to 11, but the stock RSI made higher lows. We're looking for something similar here on GameStop, and we have not seen it. We thought we saw it on the weekly time frame, right? I guess you could still say it's technically there on the weekly, but you need to find some support, and this thing is in its never-ending fall right now, right? This low to that low, significant lower low, this low to this low, slightly lower low, right? So you're seeing a little bit of a weak bullish divergence, but you need to see someone step in right here for GameStop, because if you do not find a bounce here soon, it's likely you come down here to test this 1750 area. That's probably your next level of support, as you have this wick from this April 2024 run, 1745. And these multiple rejections. And then you have the wick all the way down here in March of 2024 and this double bottom, right? So beyond 1750 is that $16 territory, and no one wants to see it come down to that, right? So that's what we're watching for. Stock ticker GME, looking at GameStop on the daily time frame from Webull. You saw a rejection into the $17 territory. And truthfully, traders, you have yet to test your daily 9, which is absolutely baffling to me, right? I really thought you were going to sideways trade until you reject the 9. That's often what these bear flags look like. But you have seen sellers step in here on the daily time frame for GME. So not a great look. You still have that gap fill currently sitting at 2166, but you are seeing the stock dump right now. Absolutely nasty, nasty, nasty. And the further this thing dumps, the more likely that the warrants are to dump as well. I haven't even checked those yet. Take a little peeky weeky. Jimmy warrants. Yeah, not surprising, right? You closed a tap against the 9-day EMA, an inverted bullish hammer candle, but still a bearish close, making a new all-time low today on the GME warrants, falling beneath your previous uptrend in support or your horizontal support, right? And almost retesting it before rejecting. So I do anticipate a lower low for the GME warrants. I anticipate a lower low for GameStop as well because of this down candle, right? You closed at the lows. You closed pretty much a penny off, or actually you closed at 3 pennies off of the low. Low today was 1792. Your close was 1795. So we've always said close at the lows, you're going lower. And that looks like it's likely here for GME. The best case scenario for GameStop here on the short term, come a little bit lower, right? Maybe that 1750 flush, make a long tail doji, right? And then create a morning star formation to potentially mark your low before crossing above this 9. The benefit here with GME being so oversold here is that you may see one of those explosive rallies upwards to this at least previous uptrend, right? I think that is possible to retest this previous uptrend. I don't know if you have the steam to get the gap fill unless something fundamental happens, but what is nice is the 9-day EMA is now so down, right? You're so oversold that it's going to be easy to see a little bit of a bid here and to cross this 9 to use as support on the way up. So that's what we're watching for the daily time frame for stock ticker GME. And overall, the volume is in a downtrend here while you capitulate. But you do not want to close at the lows on the weekly, right? Closing at the lows on the weekly is probably the worst case scenario by all means, right? So that's what we're watching for on GameStop. Doesn't look great, but I remain bullish, right? I love what Ryan Cohen's doing fundamentally, and I think AMC looks absolutely gobstank, absolutely freaking amazing, right? So that's what we got. That's what we got. A little bit shorter of a TA video today, but I want to say thank you, right? But no, seriously, thank you to every single person who has supported this channel, who is a member, who is donating, who is watching and commenting and engaging, right? This is the reason that I do these videos, so we can have a broader community and the unity come back in these stocks, in AMC, in GameStop, fighting for the financial transparency that the markets need, right? So without further ado, guys, slap the freaking like button, hit the subscribe button, and as always, traders, God bless you and your families, and remember, the best is yet to come. Let's go, and peace.